presentation. Uh, Tell us about why from MONGAR to THIMPHU via London. So the geographically and technically it doesn't sound right, but if you can explain why you chose this title.
As regard to the title, it is a very deliberate and thought-through topic. First, it has three broad meanings which are interrelated and also quite opposite, particularly the second and the third. First reason, it personally reflects my own journey in a way that, of course, as you mentioned, geographically it isn't possible or feasible. But then, given where I grew up in MONGAR for 19 years, I was within that confines of that geography of MONGAR. And it was only when I was 19 that I came to THIMPHU. And before I knew much about THIMPHU or Paro for that matter, so I got opportunity to go to Spain, and I knew about Western civilization or that sort of European civilization. And from that perspective, I knew more about town, cities development of Europe than THIMPHU and Paro. And at another level, I have been to British Library, but then I haven't been to National Library of Bhutan, unfortunately. And in politics, there is that term of the privilege of historical backwardness. So countries who came late into modern development, they can learn lesson from the countries who ventured into. And for example, Bhutan, TV was introduced only in 1999. And similarly, mobile phones didn't come out until 2003. Whereas industrialization or that advanced technologies, it was way ahead for the Western societies, particularly Europe and North American countries. So from that perspective, what lesson, Bhutan as a country, what lesson we can learn? Then the second, it is quite provocative. In that sort of politics, there is that standard of civilization. So we Bhutanese appreciate our country fellow men enough. As a result, there is that narrative that standard of civilization that we follow European standards, and in a way, there are that some people say it doesn't matter what you say. What you say, but then who says matter. So people who have that coming from advanced or industrialized countries such as European West, so we give that sort of much accreditation or acknowledgement of their views. So for me too, to make that sense, to come to THIMPHU, for example, from where the major policies are made, so it is important for me to first go to London, then come to THIMPHU, so that my views have more weight. So it has that three interrelated reasons to it. Thank you.
Now my second question is on the second half of your title, on my way to Mail. Is there any specific reason? Normally because we would take the word Pail, right? So exactly. Why Mail? If you can briefly explain this as well.
I went for my master's during COVID lockdown, and when I was trying to open bank account in United Kingdom, so I had to go time and again to Barclays. So I was thinking, because living and having grown up in that part of the country in Bhutan, so never in my life I thought of or I dare to dream about the possibility of going to and experiencing the life in UK. And as I was moving to and fro, I thought, what made my journey possible? So in that connection, so I felt that sort of deep emotional sort of attachment with the place that I grew up, that is the place of my mother's inheritance. So, and also partly it also is a reflection of my sort of general political stand, in a way, one of the issues that is women empowerment. And I thought perhaps that Mayul, and even in that narrative we call motherland, but then we don't necessarily acknowledge, or it doesn't really come out explicitly in that general discussion. So I thought maybe this gives that explicit connection to where I come from, and also one of the topical issues that are very current, relevant in this present-day sort of public policy discussion.
I have a very simple question. So, when did you start writing this book?
I started towards the end of my studies there, so it was September 2021. First 7 chapters I wrote when I was in London, second part, 7 chapters, I wrote when I was in quarantine in Paro. Then a reminder I wrote when I was out and when I was kind of discussing, sharing my perspectives, my sort of plans with friends like you, then the networks I have with members of parliament, civil service. So it was about 2 to 3 weeks that I could complete the 3rd part. So it was...
in total, how long did it take you to complete writing? I'm not talking about the editing, just from your part, completing the entire book. How long did it take? Just to get perspective, just to get an idea. How much time did you really spend in writing all these?
I would say 1.5 months, because first 14 chapters...
1.5 months?
Yes, first 14 chapters, it was straightforward, and also most of the time, and my thought process are quite clear. Only I need to type, but which isn't really fast. So first 14 chapters, maybe you could say on an average 1 day, 1 chapter. And 3rd chapter, it took more time, because when I discuss the topical issues, so I need to find evidence and also find a proper line of argument that my argument have that strong reasoning behind the recommendations that I make on current affairs.
Okay. So I've read your first book. I've read this book as well. This book, in fact, twice. I think I was the first person to read it as well, right? So is it like this book is like a sequel to your first book, or you have some other purpose? Like what's the main motivation? You were like lightly mentioning in your first answer as well, but if you have like a specific motivation for writing this book, you can share that as well.
I would not necessarily say it is a sequel. First, the current book is about the transformation, not necessarily the current transformation, but somehow you can relate it to the ongoing transformation as well. But the transformation that Bhutan underwent as I saw it is very folk. It is a gift from my late paternal grandmother. But then now I drink water on a glass, possibly made somewhere. And later on, you might have that dumpling or momo on a plastic cup. So there is, and had I been in, say, late 90s, if I had gone to public places, so I would have taken these folk and kind of use this folk for whatever purpose it may be. And you and I, we are both Thanglalo speakers or Shachok, and now we are communicating in that English. So in a way, we see that as a source of transformation. And in that book, at least the first 14 chapters, I talk about, I have that deep or huge reservation of doing that sort of autobiography. Who am I to write my own autobiography? But then what I felt was, because I comment a lot on public issues, so why should I be interested? So I wrote it, one thing primarily, so that people make that objective assessment of what I write. Second, I come from that rural hinterland countryside, and we say Bhutan culture is one of the important sort of artifacts or institution or that sort of heritage for Bhutan's status as a sovereign and independent country. Now, given that sort of a transformation we are undergoing, so I thought maybe that rural story that I can write and can help in documenting what was there and kind of transformation that we are undergoing. And also, as we interact more with outside world, so I thought, why not I give a try to share my own story so that outsiders or expatriates can also have a diverse and that sort of broadened understanding of Bhutan. So that was the main reason why, despite having huge reservation, I made that effort to incorporate my personal stories. third part, because I comment, and one thing, having a very critical friend like you, so to give a comment or that critical comment is quite easy, because you can make that judgment or that comment on literally. So that we, if we want to grow or have become prosperous, have that sort of a fulfilled life, but then we don't necessarily open up to have that honest, frank conversation. So I thought maybe my writing on that topical issues ranging from, say, gender, education, taxation, despite my limited knowledge, may open up that sort of a space or create that sort of enabling environment where people might think, oh, he says this on this, but I don't really agree. So perhaps my thinking was maybe it might trigger some thinking in people so that we can have that discussion on matters that are of public concern.
The book has a total of 21 chapters, and the chapters are divided into 3 parts. First part is titled Legacy, second is Breakthroughs, and the third is the Aspiration. And you particularly requested to have the book talk only on the aspiration part, and I would like to request you to give your reasoning for choosing to discuss only the third part. Why only the third part to be discussed? And as I looked at the first 2 parts, although you had some reservations about writing autobiography or something, but I would still say that the first 2 parts basically is an autobiography. So you basically tell your story, and maybe as we are not going to discuss the first 2 parts, if you can briefly summarize Legacy, Breakthroughs, and then give the reason why you chose to discuss only the third part, and then we'll go deeper in the third part.
So it has that similar line of position that I took when I first wrote the book, that I try to, while there are 14 chapters, but then if we compare the word content, so the last 7 chapters would be equal to, if not more than, the first 14 chapters combined. So as far as possible, I try to minimize my sort of a descriptive story, and in a way, there is that analytical component that how my interaction with the society, both sort of informal institutions such as family, the neighborhoods, and also policies that are put in place by state shaped me. So there is that interaction between individual decision-making and the societal institutions, both formal and informal. So as to the main question as to why I chose and decided and requested to discuss on third is personal stories. I think we can discuss if interested, whenever we meet, honest truths. But then topical issues, if we take time, dedicated our say resources, not necessarily financial, then the moment if my points arise, give certain sort of triggering thoughts in you, then one would automatically, my belief is that people would question, who is he? What made him think that way? So that was the main point, that if at all the point I raise in the book are of that matter of importance, then the remaining 14 chapters would automatically be taken care of. So that was...
We noticed that you mentioned specific days when a particular event happened, and that because I know that you have this habit of writing daily journals, so you are able to mention the specific date. So that's something I appreciate about you. But the point that I'm trying to get to is first 2 parts, while it's still autobiographical, you still lightly mention the issues that you try to point out in the third part. So if you can share some of the issues in the book that you very seriously feel for?
First, about the daily journal. I'm a student of history, so you may like to assume that my retention capacity is quite strong, so that dates and events. Second, on daily journal, growing up in that very countryside, raised by illiterate agrarian parents, so I really didn't sort of imagine myself maintaining a daily journal. It started first when you gifted me the diary of Punatang Chu 1 or 2, I think, in 2014. Of course, you didn't say explicitly that you maintain the diary. So, because one thing what it crossed my mind, is I try to, of course, generally we value gifts. So when you gifted me that, so I thought perhaps maybe I should make that optimal use of the of the gift, and that's how that maintaining daily journal started. But then it was never one single approach. At different points, I tried different. In 2014, so the first year I maintained, so at one point I tried to kind of plan my activities, mention, and then track it in the evening. So, but then towards the end, I find too taxing on me, and sometimes it isn't really good thing to put you on, to put yourself on that sort of a surveillance or to track everything. Then I dropped the idea, and then I just went on reflecting on the events or the activities, on the persons I met and what I felt. So that was how it began and gained momentum. And now if I don't do it, so I feel that sort of incompleteness in me if I don't maintain the diary. What it helps is, first, I think I'm an emotional person, but then I don't show it. By and large, maintaining that daily journal helps because it helps in moderating your emotions. And second, when you write, because in 24 hours, or at least 8 hours, considering that work time, you do a lot of things. But then the diary, it is just, say, 21 lines. So one will need to prioritize what is important. And in so doing, it helps in organizing your thoughts, prioritizing things, and how you articulate your thoughts. And of course, when you write, it also improves your language, writing skills. So it helps in a number of ways. First, organizing your thoughts, moderating your own emotions, and also improving your language. And needless to mention the record, because once you forget, then you go there and refer.
Thank you. Great to know that I had a part in, letting you start writing a
Yes,
diary.
yes, definitely.
Actually,
Thank you for that.
It was in 2014.
Yes.
Okay. So I think I also had this habit of maintaining daily journals. I started writing daily journals from 2006, I think, when I was in my 10th grade. I actually used to write both in Dzongkha and English. And when I was in Sherpze, that's when I stopped writing. So I stopped myself, but good to know that I managed to play a small role in someone like you who still continues to write daily journal.
Not a small, it's a big role.
We can talk about it later. So you have not responded to my question, so I wanted you to talk about the most important issues that you feel for in the book.
Oh, sorry. So then my retention capacity is not so strong. In that 7 chapters, of course, 7 chapters, but then there are a number of issues that I made an effort to cover. And the most important of all, if I'm to choose, I would choose wage rate. Perhaps it is influenced by where I come from and also the situation that I know most about. Second, it's about the equality, or if you reverse it, inequality. Then third, I would put gender.
From my observation, this book to me is more of like a strategic document, while the first part is more of like an autobiography. But the part 3 is the most important part because it contains recommendations on different areas of our economy and our society, which affects us. Like he was talking about minimum wage. He was talking about women empowerment. He talks about education and he literally talks about almost everything that affects us. As I said, everything under the sun is his interest. But he has an interesting way of putting things together. He talks about music. And also, I remember coming across a mention of one of my songs, Lok Show, which is on the rural-urban migration. Then he also talks about his favorite football club, Liverpool, and he has ways of connecting, things which to us may look completely unrelated. So, very interesting way of putting things together. Who was your targeted audience, and what is your expectation from this book?
Different chapters are meant for different people or different groups of people. Third part, primarily to policymakers or decision makers, so that they give a thinking or consider it as an alternative view. By these, when I wrote this, I didn't put forward it as all binding and this is it sort of thing. Even today, I don't really stand with that sort of a view. Simply to encourage alternative views or, if viable, my views. So that was main important. Overall, I would say stand out objective. Second, related to it, we don't discuss much about the topical issues. Even in social media, people interact, but not many. And people discuss only on that sort of based on anonymous accounts. To an extent that I had to write disclaimer because I was told that there are many critical comments and I will have to do a disclaimer. So I did that primarily thinking that if I can put forward my ideas, then people might also get interested in the topics. And as I was kind of saying earlier, the discussion of the average person is more insightful or have more kind of significance than a wisdom of one smart person. So just to get that sort of a conversation going. So that is one important aspect of the third part. So primarily Bhutanese. Other two sections, the legacy part, I talk about more about, of course, my story, then Bhutan's socio-economic and culture. So as I interacted with particularly fellow countrymen in urban centers, they didn't really know much about rural life. And I went abroad, interacted with foreigners. A Moroccan friend of mine said that you are a diamond. What I was saying, I am from Bhutan and we have just 700,000 people. So given that sort of an exposure or interactions I had, then I thought maybe it is important that I get that sort of a story put in place so that people know more about it. And also for Bhutanese to understand about our own society. Of course, not definitive, but in one aspect. So it has that youth, target to youth, policymakers, and also foreigners who want to know more about Bhutan. And that is why I have that cover picture of bridge, not other object.
First, I would like to congratulate you for publishing your second book. It is a very tough journey to publish and to sell. We understand that. And I would also like to congratulate you for bringing out so many issues in a single book, covering chapters from politics to economics. So it is very rare to find somebody connecting dots everywhere and trying to share concerns of small people in a big way. I would like to believe that one platform for small people to make a big voice is a book. So therefore I would like to congratulate you. And then also, this is one way how our youth like you and those others who are publishing books on the go can contribute in a small way to nation building. However, we have few things to look at. I would like to ask these questions. First question is, when you started to write, and now you are selling your book, you are marketing your book, right? I'm sure you are facing pretty big challenge, and there are so many challenges indeed. So, what's going on with your book these days? That's the first question. The second is, since so many youths are coming out with books being published, sometimes we see somebody publish a book for one time and then thereafter we don't see that person publishing again. Maybe facing the repercussion. Maybe because somebody is not able to sell because of the quality of books that is being produced. So how do you want to comment on the quality that we need to improve on in publishing the book, and also on the side of marketing challenges you are facing at the moment?
Maybe I don't have that marketing flavor because I don't really can't go on individual and praise it by my book, that sort of a thing. First, when I wrote this book, I didn't have that sort of a commercial aspect, that commercial interest of sort, but primarily to start that conversation going, that was the thing. And right now I also do that primarily to encourage that sort of a thing. And hopefully one day, maybe by the roadside of Kangdung or MONGAR or Shimgang or maybe Northern Love, we get to discuss on the topic that I just raised. The challenge I face is the first books were sold in May 2021, June, and my friends who had helped me, I'm very much thankful, and I also acknowledge and feel sort of the position, reactions they got from potential buyers. So in a way, I get the importance of the book in our individual lives. I didn't really keep account, but I think I was able to sell some 1,000 copies throughout the country, and from which I was able to donate some 86,000 for different causes. So for which I'm also thankful to the buyers, however kind of reluctant you are. So it helped not only to me for repaying my printing cost, but also to say beneficiaries, particularly the patients of MONGAR Regional Referral Hospital, and also project beneficiaries of Samdra Initiative. And with regard to the sustainability or the continuation of writing, my take is the topics I write, these are serious matters. And what I get from people is people aren't really interested, and they love sort of love story, literature, and maybe and my consolation is that maybe my books are of serious topics and people don't like it, and there's no sort of market potential. Others, I don't know, maybe there's no much sort of persistence in us, that one time we don't get sort of good reception or feedback, and then people, oh, that's not my job, so that sort of a thing. So maybe we may need to have, because we say Bhutan is an oral society. So to read, then we might have to also move from that grander narrative of oral society, just listen to, but then also read. So maybe my only word or suggestion for writers, potential writers, this is my second book, is have a bit of patience and maybe gradually. And they're saying that Golejon Bongulasa Kuwigi Dichi Shao. So maybe one day we can circumambulate Lhasa with a book.
If you post about the book, we can have this hashtag I read for Mayul.
If you were supposed to add a chapter, given the chain of events that has happened since you published the book so far, we all know so many things have happened. So will there be any new thing that you will be actually hearing in the chapter? If so, what would that be? Or would it just be a plain simple reiteration of mentioning that all the things is going exactly as you had envisioned?
Having made that sort of public stand or positions I've taken publicly, and the title On My Way to Mail, and also if you had checked that banner, so I write where hope beckons, and H is uppercase, here hope beckons. Having made that statement and listening to the conversation, the first people I met and meetings, you don't conclude the conversation without asking, don't you have a plan to go abroad? Going abroad has become so infectious, I would say even more infectious than COVID-19, particularly in literacy among Bhutan. To the extent that people I believed or I thought would not think that they need to go abroad. So given that sort of surrounding and also interactions that I have, because if we stress 1, 2, thrice, then it gets into your mind. And now my position, and if I am to add a chapter, then I would say a reality check on my way to Mayul.